welcome to Oklahoma Gardening. I'm Ray Campbell, one of the former hosts of the show, and we want to welcome you back to this year's gardening season after being off 3 weeks for the OETA Festival. During this period of time when we are looking for a permanent host for Oklahoma Gardening, we want to assure you that we'll continue to deliver good quality gardening information for you, our viewers. Many of the shows will be hosted either by myself or other former hosts, Brenda, Steve, and Kim, and also including Steve Dobbs. You'll also be seeing some familiar faces that you've seen before on Oklahoma Gardening with some of the state specialists at OSU as well as other guests. So we want to welcome you to today's show and a new season of Oklahoma Gardening.
TV you'll grow to love.
On today's program, Extension Ornamental Horticulture Specialist Mike Schnelle has some plants with year-round interest. Botanic Garden intern Sarah Wallace transplants blueberry and layered raspberry plants. Extension Water Resources Specialist Sala Tagbian has information about Water Week. Extension Turfgrass Specialist Justin Moss talks with Madeleine Wiens from the Oklahoma City Office of Sustainability about how to save water around the home. And Barbara Brown has a delicious beet salad for one. Oklahoma Gardening is a production of the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the land grant mission of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University, dedicated to improving the quality of life of the citizens of Oklahoma through research-based information. Underwriting assistance is provided by TLC, Oklahoma's leading garden center, Southwood Landscape and Nursery, Tulsa's source for great gardens, and the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry, helping to keep Oklahoma green and growing.
So I'd like to talk about winter honeysuckle today. It's been one of my favorites. It's kind of an heirloom large shrub, sometimes small tree that I think we need to use more in Oklahoma. And a couple of reasons I think we need to use it more. It provides us year-round beauty. So let's start here in the month of February. It's just starting to flower. And in a couple of weeks, it'll be completely engulfed by whitish yellow flowers. Very, very aromatic to the nose. So it looks good. It smells good. And it gives us that winter blast of color that we desperately need here in Oklahoma. Of all 4 seasons, we probably fall the shortest in the winter seasons, not having enough color. Well, winter honeysuckle, which is fairly easily available here in our nurseries and garden centers, can give us that color. After it finishes blooming, it comes out with blemish-free foliage throughout the growing season, a little bit of yellow fall color, and then during a mild winter, it's completely evergreen. And you'll notice this particular winter, it dropped a little bit of its foliage because of some of our low temperatures that we've had, like this particular week. Also, if you look inside, you'll see exfoliating bark. So when you couple the exfoliating bark, the aromatic flowers, the attractive flowers, and the pest-free foliage, that makes for a 12-month beauty that we have at our disposal. It also, if you look at it in its entirety here, it makes a nice informal windbreak. It would give you privacy from your neighbors. It can mitigate dust. It can mitigate noise. So it has a lot of applications, again, throughout the state of Oklahoma. Even in the panhandle of Oklahoma, it would endure their winters and their summers. So winter honeysuckle, if it does become overgrown, because again it matures, you can see, to 10 to 12 feet tall and nearly as wide, it does lend itself to rejuvenation type pruning, meaning that you can prune it to taste. You could take it nearly to the ground. You could thin it out ideally to suit your needs and your size limitations in your landscape. However, if you were to choose to leave it at its mature height and width, it makes great cover for birds and other animals that need that, particularly winter shelter, but also when they're nesting. It gives them a sense of protection and a means for raising their young. So that's the beauty of winter honeysuckle. It can be pruned to taste. Another plant along that same vein of thought for winter beauty would be winter jasmine. And the reason I'm so pro winter jasmine is, unlike forsythia, it starts to bloom sometimes even before Thanksgiving. So from November through early March, you have flowers, yellow flowers, coming out on this usually evergreen shrub. This particular winter, some of the specimens I've noticed have defoliated, again because some of our very low lows, but in most winters it's completely evergreen. Again, you have a 12-month shrub to give you excitement, about 6 by 6 at maturity. You can prune it to your liking. It prefers full sun, although I've seen it do well in afternoon shade and continue to bloom. So those are just two of many shrubs that are underutilized for not only Stillwater, but again, the balance of the state, including the panhandle. If you were willing to winter irrigate, it would bloom even up in those more hostile conditions. So a great plant. It is commercially propagated by our growers in Oklahoma, so you could buy this at your favorite garden center tonight if you'd like to.
Hi, my name is Sarah Wallace, and I'm a student here at Oklahoma State University. With our remodeling project, we're going to be removing the small fruit and moving them down to the vegetable garden temporarily. So these are our blueberry plants, and the first step I took was to go ahead and mark them. I found the design that we hopefully had written down the correct varieties, and went ahead and labeled them all so that as we move them, we know which varieties are actually doing well and which varieties are not. This is actually a blue ray, and we are going to go ahead and prune it right before we move it so that number one, it's less weight to actually carry, and number two, because we're disturbing the root system, we want to go ahead and remove some of the top so that it balances it out, so it gives it a chance of actually living and thriving and hopefully producing more blueberries for us. So as you prune blueberries, we're going to take off at least a third. We always want to start with crossing branches. This branch right here has some dead material on the top, and I'm going to always try to cut to an outward bud. This one would be called a deranged because it would rub over against another branch. So we're going to cut it way back. Try to do this all the way around. Here's some more ones that would be rubbing on each other. So we would actually go ahead and cut it way back. And the last cut. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and dig around the base about 1 foot away from it and just straight down. Sort of a little bit angled in towards the bottom of the roots. Blueberries are shallow rooted. They should be about 8 to 12 inches deep, but they do not have a tap root. So supposedly, this is going to be easy to move. You'll notice that we have pine needles on top to help reduce our pH, as well as we have these great pecan shells as a mulch that work great to decrease the acidity and keep the pH low for the blueberries. And as I go around, I'm trying to kind of open it up with the shovel so that I can decrease any roots that are stuck. And then hopefully I'll be able to just bend over and pick up a blueberry. Okay, and here we are, ready in its new home. This is in a vegetable garden. I've already dug out my hole, and with the acidity needing to be so low, we dug out some of our soil and replaced it with peat moss and the pecan shells. Some of them had already been really well decomposed. So I'm going to arrange it a little bit, move around. I see that it's still a little bit high. You can see if I can move it around a little bit more. And then I'm going to go ahead and backfill it with the pecan shells and the compost. The biggest issue with the blueberries is the soil and their pH, but then they're really picky about the water. And our blueberry fact sheet is HLA 6248. They recommend 4 to 6 inches of mulch on top of the actual blueberry base. So I'm going to push this in. Then I would water it in well. You can tell that we have a mound, sort of like on a hill. I want to make sure that none of my roots are sticking out on the side and that are exposed. And then I would water this in, and then I would go ahead and put mulch on it too. I'm going to try to do a pyramid like they suggest. And this is really important to keep the soil moisture very moist. Blueberries are really picky with their acidity and their moisture levels. They like to be moist, but if they're wet for even more than 24 hours, they'll die. They're really, really picky. So I'm going to bound this up. It probably looks like I need a little bit more. Then you can see that we have our drip irrigation we will just put it back up around. And then in the summertime, it may even be wise to put more compost on top. The best thing for blueberries in the summertime is to have evaporative cooling on their roots. They need to have mulch on top and then the irrigation on top, and so that it slowly soaks through to keep them moist. So here I'm going to add another little bit of mulch. These are actually our pecan shells. And since we're in Oklahoma, if you all live near a processing plant for the pecans, this is kind of like a waste product. But for us, this is recycling. And it's great acidity. You can tell how dark it is. It's broken down really well. And this is just going to be a great top dressing for both the blueberries and a lot of our other plants here in the vegetable garden. So here you have it as our transplanted blueberry. We're going to water it in well. And then for the first couple of weeks, we're going to probably water it daily just to make sure that it's doing really well. This is a really good, well-drained soil. It's going to have 6 to 8 hours of sun a day, and it's ready to take off. Obviously, if you were doing a new bed, you would want to buy new virus-free plants, but since we already had the plants, they've been doing well, we're going to try the experiment in transplanting them.
The Oklahoma Water Resources Center has organized the OSU Water Week from March 23rd to March 27th. And they have planned lots of interesting water-related activities during this week, including the celebration of the World Water Day and the Student Water Conference. One of the events that has been planned for the OSU Water Week is to take part in the 40-gallon challenge. The 40-gallon challenge was started by the extension program at University of Georgia, and it encourages participants to take a pledge to conserve at least 40 gallons of water every day. It's very simple to participate, and it's a friendly competition between different counties and different states. All you need to do is to go to 40gallonchallenge.org, select the state and the county where you live, and then you'll see a list of practices that you can adopt to conserve water. And for each practice, you'll see how much water you can save per day. There are lots of practices that you can select from. Some of the indoor practices include using low-flow shower heads, or turning the faucet off when you're brushing your teeth, or fixing a leaking toilet or a leaking faucet. Some of the outdoor practices that could result in a significant conservation of water include fixing sprinkler systems so they don't spray sidewalks and driveways, using smart irrigation controllers such as the one you see here behind me, using sensors such as rain sensor and freeze sensors to improve irrigation management. And also an activity that results in the largest water conservation is to reduce the irrigation runtime by 2 minutes, which will result in saving about 80 gallons of water per day. So we encourage all the Oklahomans to take part in this very interesting challenge, and we are looking forward to see an increasing number of pledges from different counties in the state. So for more information, please visit the website water.okstate.edu.
So I'd also like to talk about this 12-month beautiful vine that's native to the United States and native close to actually Stillwater is our cross vine. And what I like about the cross vine is we've had some particularly cold nights here in Stillwater, yet we see it's in a semi or fully evergreen state despite the cold weather. So you have evergreen foliage, quite lustrous even in the dead of winter. You can come out here with a cup of coffee and enjoy this in the morning. And with the anticipation of orange, beautiful flowers throughout the summer months that will bring in the wildlife, the butterflies, the hummingbirds, etc. So you couple the flowers that are yet to come with the evergreen habit, particularly in the dead of winter, you have something you can be proud of any day of not only the growing season, but in the dead of winter, such as we're taping today. So again, also native to the United States and definitely an underutilized vine. There's also cultivars cross vine that are also commercially available, but they primarily come in oranges, and there's one that's a nearly yellow flower as well. So I'd also like to look at Ely Agnes. This is a variegated type that tends to be evergreen, such as the winter that we're having here. Despite our low night temperatures, it's kept almost all of its foliage, which lends it then to 12 months of beauty. Ely Agnes is also noted for its sweetly scented flowers later in the growing season. This particular specimen won't get much taller or wider, so it is a viable shrub for even the smallest of landscapes. But for today's purposes, I'm particularly excited about the winter beauty that it lends to any Oklahoman, regardless whether he or she lives in the state. It's going to endure our summers, so it's winter hardy, it's heat hardy as well as winter hardy. It's just a great plant, ought to be used more, and is available from our local garden centers and nurseries.
Hi, we are here in our raspberry bed where we're getting ready to transplant them down to the vegetable garden. Here we have some black raspberries, and this is the Bristol variety. And as you can see, we had two main berry plants, but that have kind of multiplied. This multiplication happens, you can either do it on purpose, or these actually layered themselves. These long canes that have been already cut off were about 8 to 10 feet long. And I was trying a new variety of trellising to see if we could get more berries off of them before we actually had to move them. So they actually went over and around the trellis and then came back down on the ground. And here you can see that they have layered in. As soon as that tip hits the ground, we have multiple new plants that come out. So now we're going to have to divide them. We're going to take each little section of plant and give it its own new area down in the vegetable garden with drip irrigation and its own dirt area. If we leave them like this, A, it's hard to pick the fruit, B, it's not very good air circulation, and C, they just kind of compete for nutrients and water. So this is what happens naturally, or you can actually lay them over. You can actually lay this one down like this, put it in the ground, and within a couple weeks, it will sprout new growth. And then you would trim it here after it's got some good roots on it, say 6 to 8 weeks. Then you could trim it here, and then you would have a whole new bush, and you could move this to a new location where you'd actually like a new plant. So for today, I am going to I've already marked all of the extra little ones that were layered. It's called tip layering when it goes out into the ground. And we used to have 4 main larger plants, 3 Bristol black raspberries and 1 Dorman red, and now we have 12 plants to move into the vegetable garden. So I hope you have a good success with your raspberries, but for plant propagation at home, tip layering is a really easy thing with raspberries and blackberries.
So spring is coming soon, and it's time to start thinking about our irrigation systems and how to save water outdoors. And so one of the things we can do is really think about fixing leaks around the house. And EPA even sponsors a Fix a Leak Week for homeowners. And they have a nice website called WaterSense that tells you how you can save water around your home. And here today we have a guest with us, Madeleine Wiens, from the City of Oklahoma City Office of Sustainability. And she's got some great tips for us about how to save water around the home. So what can you tell us, Madeleine?
Yeah, so as you mentioned, EPA WaterSense Month takes place for the entire month of March, and then throughout April they also try to promote ways that we can avoid water waste outdoors and within our homes and with some of the fixtures in them. And they've found that a leak that is as small as just 1/32 of an inch in diameter, which is just about as thick as a dime, can actually lose you as much as 6,300 gallons of water a month. So checking for those in your irrigation system is great. Also, if you find that your hose has a leak at the spigot, you can easily replace your nylon washer and just try to tighten it as much as possible.
So that's great. It's amazing how much water can be lost just by a tiny leak like that. So Again, that's probably why they sponsor Fix a Leak Week or or Water Sense Month. So you're with the City of Oklahoma City. Does the city itself sponsor anything like this as well?
Yes, absolutely. The City Water Utilities Department, as a part of our Water Utilities Trust, has a campaign called Squeeze Every Drop. You can go to their Twitter at Squeeze Every Drop or squeezeeverydrop.com, and you'll get some simple tips for how to avoid watering during some of the times of the day where a lot of your water is going to evaporate. And you can also see some tips on how to determine whether or not you have a leak in your toilet. For example, you can put a food coloring drop in the tank of your toilet, and if that shows up in the bowl, that means that you've probably got a leak in that toilet. We also internally try to promote city departments to save water within city facilities. And so we actually sponsored all of our fire stations and police stations to trade out the aerators on their faucets to higher pressure aerators that only flow about 1/2 gallon per minute.
Well, that's great. I mean, just looking around Oklahoma City and around the state, you can see some of those water reservoir levels are shrinking. So saving water around the home, very important. What else should the viewers know? Maybe if they're not from Oklahoma City, maybe they're from other parts of the state or from the region, what can they do?
Yeah, actually the Oklahoma Water Resources Board, as a part of their comprehensive water plan, has created kind of a landing page on their Oklahoma Water Resources Board website where you can access resources like we just mentioned through the EPA and other state agencies throughout the country who have tried to promote these kinds of practices at home.
Well, thank you, Madeleine. Great tips for the homeowner, how to save water around the home. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Moss.
Remember last summer when you were doing all that work getting things stored and put away for the winter months? Well, this is winter and this is when you're supposed to use them, although you can use them other times too. So today I'm doing canned beet and blue cheese salad for one. A lot of families are not as large as they used to be. If you still have a family of 2 or 3, you can increase this recipe easily. But a lot of times it's hard to find something that's just good for one person. So let's look at what we've got. I've got 1/2 cup of canned sliced beets. Now you could use whole beets. If you're using whole beets, I'd cut them into maybe quarters. You don't have to slice them. You could also use diced beets if you did them that way. I've drained them well, and now I'm going to make a dressing to go over it. And to that, for that, I'm going to use a teaspoon of fresh lemon juice, 1/8 of a teaspoon of kosher salt, 1/8 of a teaspoon of black pepper, and 3 to 4 teaspoons of olive oil. Now use a really nice flavored olive oil here because this is one that you're going to be able to taste fairly well. Just going to whisk that together. It's not a lot, so it doesn't take very long to get it to where we want to go. And now I'm going to take about 1/4 of this and just drizzle it over the beets. Now I put the beets on a plate. If you're going to make this your dinner plate, you might want to use a larger one. This works for the side salad plate. What I want to have happen now is I want time for these flavors to blend. So I put about, as I said, about 1 tablespoon of this dressing onto the beets themselves. We'll give them about 15 minutes and those flavors will be absorbed by the beets. Now the next thing that we're going to do, we'll assume 15 minutes have gone by, is I have 1 cup of fresh greens. You could use any kind of greens that you have in your kitchen. It can be mixed greens or fresh greens out of the garden if it's that far along in the season. While the beets are marinating, you don't want the greens on the plate because if they come in contact with the dressing, they're going to wilt. So just leave them over to the side. And then you're going to take the rest of your dressing and dribble that over the greens that you've got there. And the last thing we're going to do for this is some blue cheese. Now you could use feta if you prefer feta, if you haven't gotten a taste for the blue. And just crumble that over. You want it to be over the beets, but you also, to make this look like it's all part of the same dish, you can crumble a little bit of it over the greens as well. That's all there is to this. It's very simple. While the beets are actually marinating there on the plate, you could go ahead and get the rest of your meal ready, and you're ready for dinner. It's great for one person or 2 if it needs to be. I hope you'll try this one. It's canned beets with blue cheese salad for one.
While marking events on your calendar, be sure to consider these wonderful gardening activities coming up in Oklahoma. Next week, former host Steve Owens will join us to talk succulents. Associate Floriculture Professor Bruce Dunn shows how to get proper seed germination by stratification and scarification. David Hillock will have tips for pruning back our roses, and Barbara Round has a winter vegetable soup. Join us then for more TV You'll Grow to Love. To find out more information about show topics, as well as recipes, videos, articles, fact sheets, and other resources, including a directory of local extension offices, be sure and visit our website, oklahomagardening.okstate.edu. And we always have great information, answers to questions, photos, and gardening discussions on your favorite social media as well. Join in on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can find this entire show and other recent shows, as well as individual segments on our Oklahoma Gardening YouTube channel. And tune in to our OK Gardening Classics YouTube channel to watch segments from previous hosts. Oklahoma Gardening is produced by the Oklahoma Cooperative Extension Service as part of the Division of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources at Oklahoma State University. The Botanic Garden at OSU is home to our studio gardens, and we encourage you to come visit this beautiful Stillwater jewel. We wish to thank our generous underwriters, TLC Garden Centers, Southwood Landscape and Garden Center, and the Oklahoma Department of Agriculture, Food, and Forestry. Additional support is provided by Pond Pro Shops, Greenleaf Nursery and the Garden Debut Plants, and the Oklahoma Horticultural Society.